the name of my presentation is Defining Social Journalism from an Audience Perspective. Now, thank you. I thought that they put some microphone. There are different views to what extent the journalist, an autonomous journalist, with bother about the preferences of the audience, and according to some theoreticians, I think, and I'm going in this presentation quite much to refer to Bourdieu's field theory. Bourdieu, for instance, means that in a democratic society, the production field, in this case the journalistic field, will be more or less independent of the power field in society and of especially of the commercial field, which is unfortunately not the case. So we can see that journalism by and large is depends on is heteronymous field, the journalistic field. However, it could be at least, it is no matter what position a journalist will have to do this autonomy of the field and so on. So it could be always good to know, to start to know the point of view of the audience. So in this presentation, I'm going to show a couple of analyses of some large survey studies performed. I will show just two examples, one from a study that we performed here also in an earlier project, 2007, with people, four segments, around 70-year-olds and around 50-year-olds, partly in St. Petersburg, partly in Stockholm. Random sample, we used at that time random samples, and we put very many questions, resulting in about 600 variables. Yeah, I know. I will just. I'm not. Okay, no problem. One of the questions was worded like this: how important? How important is it for you personally that the media deal with the following areas? And then we have, in mixed order, put about 40 different items. You can see fashion, national news, international news, pornography, culture, sports, corruption, environmental issues, and so on, all kind of issues. It matters for every respondent to position her or himself to each of these issues in a 5-degree scale. Not at all important, one very important. Starting from the answers, I have performed a number of factor analysis and other correlation analysis in order to structure all these items, all these 40 items, because actually they are very different. Sports, pornography, corruption, international news, and so on. Factor analysis give us a very good possibilities in this respect, and here I will show you here it is. One resolution of the factor analysis, I'll see now if I can show it. One resolution in 6 factors. Now, you can see the same items, the same domains, the same areas of interest that media should cover, but now they are sorted by the computer program in some 6 groups. Some 6 groups. They are sorted along some central dimensions that the computer program has extracted. These dimensions being also statistical variables, I can find a correlation coefficient, a correlation measure for each new factor, general dimension, so to say, in people's preferences. These factors and the original questions, the original areas, refugee and immigration issues, development assistance issues, and so on. As you can see, the computer starting, I will underline for those who are not familiar with statistical analysis, that this job, I have not done anything here. It's the computer program that has produced this structure, this sorting of the programs. And the first factor, the first general dimension in people's tastes for media content, I have conditionally named social issues here. It includes issues like refugee and immigration, development assistance issues, gender equality issues, relation between different ethnic groups, homeless persons situation, alcohol and drug issues, HIV, AIDS, economic divide in society, educational issues, labor market issues, child care and family issues, environmental issues, terrorism, corruption, defense issues. You can see more in the top a topic is positioned, the strongest association it has with this so-called factor, social issues. So most strongest associated are, in this case, refugee, development issues, gender equality, relations, and so on. Next factor, relatively independent, factor number 4, I have conditionally named fashion and entertainment. Beauty, fashion, music, it has sorted quite acquainted topics. Music reports about or with celebrities, relations and love, entertainment. Well, it's structured around consumer issues and entertainment, and so on. Next factor contains national news, international news, local news in general, culture, economy in general. And then we have some a little bit strange but well-defined factors. This is a so-called male factor in the sense that males are more interested in these topics. Here are, on the contrary, females, interior decoration, food cooking, and so on. However, you can see that medical services and health, although placed under factor number 6, it has quite a strong affiliation, also quite a strong correlation to factor 1. It is in a way also defined as a social issue. I don't know if you agree with me that we can, in this sense, that Marina, for instance, is discussing social issues in her very interesting book. It corresponds to several of the theories, Marina, that you discuss initially in your book, what is social journalism and so on. So, okay, we can discuss to what extent it's called. what is interesting, I can mention, this structure is quite independent of the segment. We can repeat the analysis only with young Russians, with young Swedes, or with old Swedes. The structure remains principally the same, notwithstanding the fact that the distribution of the answers doesn't need to remain the same. For instance, generally speaking, it's interesting to point out here, in this case it turned out that the Swedish audience in general showed stronger interest to social issues, these topics, and the factor in general, than the Russian audiences. But this factor was independent of gender and age, for instance, and so on. On the contrary, the other factors there, for instance, this factor is more or less dependent, or very dependent on gender. Women are more interested in these topics, and so on. Further, what we can do further with this, and I cannot demonstrate it because I have not so much time. I've been told that I have just 15 minutes. What's interesting, we can, as I told you, in our survey, we put we obtained 600 variables, many different questions. And then I can statistically correlate each of these factors, and for us, most interesting is first factor, social issues. I can correlate it to background variables. I told you now some results. And I can correlate it to all other kind of preferences and lifestyles. How often people go to theater, what different kind of music they think. For instance, do they think about jazz or techno or hard rock or something? What do they think about existential questions, basically, and so on? How much do they rely on other people? All kind of questions that can be measured with some kind of ordinal or interval scales. Now, so then it could be interesting for media manager, for instance, how to perform. And our Swedish, I have done several such studies when I worked at the Swedish Broadcasting Corporation in the 90s. And at that time, although it was independent, they do not send any kind of advertising, but the producers, the managers, they were very interesting to study, to position every program in relation to this, to the people's, the audience's preferences. Just to excuse me. Another example which is interesting to show in this respect is second example. In a study called Music Tastes and Lifestyle that I've performed in 1995, we put another question. How interested are you of each of the following issues? Now the question, we have fewer issues, and it was somewhat different. And then we could see again factor 2, which we called at that time welfare issues, medical services, alcohol and drug, child care, labor and education, corresponds more or less to this social issue factor. What is interesting here, if we take another factor, in that time, the situation in South Africa, Rwanda, Bosnia, China were very, very mediatized, so to say, so people were conscious. That's why we put some specific talk. How interested are you in the situation in Rwanda, for instance? And we could say that there crystallized one factor that we called global issues. In the same, this is just one question that we put in a big survey which focused actually music tastes and lifestyles. And what is interesting to see from Bourdieuian perspective is that the first factor, global issues, political issues, it was strongly correlated with what Bourdieu called fine culture, like classical music, you know, abstract art, advanced jazz, and this kind of culture which have status in society and which are in a moment some specific have some specific audience. In that case, I will finish with that. The factor welfare issues or social issues which we obtained turn out to be quite relatively independent of this capital defined in Bourdieuian sense. Economic capital and cultural capital, which means that it's very broad, which is confirmed also of the first analysis that I showed you. It gathers most than a third of the variance in the answers of the public. So, I mean, this is not the only and the best probably question. We can put the question different way. We can multiply the topics to say, but it is always good, could be good starting position to try to define, notwithstanding what a journalist or a manager thinks, to understand how the taste of the public, of the audience is structured, and in order to comply or to not. Okay. Thank you.
Спасибо. Вопросы какие-то? Пожалуйста. Слушаем вас вопрос, пожалуйста.
Очень быстро насчет Боснии. В какой части Боснии мусульманской, христианской, сербской или, собственно, среди большевиков проводилось исследование? Насколько оно затрагивает все стороны государственного населения? Спасибо.
Я не понял, поскольку... Опять
What part of Bosnian population? Yeah,
Bosnia.
It's for Bosnia.
No. Okay, I see. What kind of population? No, it's not Bosnian population. It's a survey carried out. Это опрос, который мы сделали здесь. Это русские и шведы ответили. А вот один из вопросов был только такой. Поскольку вам интересна ситуация в Боснии, поскольку шведов и русских интересуется, понимаете? То есть вот это просто такой вопрос. А там в Боснии мы вообще ничего не делаем. Что от Yale Research? Здесь написано 95-й год.
Ну, такая ситуация в Боснии, да.
Тогда была, да, война там шла и так далее. Поэтому было актуально, СМИ очень много писали. А Босния, Руанда тоже было в то же время. Понимаете, просто поскольку нам было интересно, поскольку люди интересуются этой ситуацией, кто интересуется? А кто-то интересуется, очень много кто-то не интересуется. Читают, не читают.
Ну, в гуманитарном смысле можно сделать вывод, что все люди братья, то есть мы все интересуемся одними и теми же проблемами, независимо от места обитания и даже от года.